broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads from over 200 countries and your number one source in after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hi! Welcome to the series premiere pilot of CBS, Madam Secretary. I'm your host, Pat Lambert, and with me today I have co-hosts Courtney Henderson and Sterling Cates. This is the West Wing's theme music, but I thought only appropriate for a good old pilot.
It's in the West Wing.
Let's talk about this.
You sound very presidential with that music behind your voice.
It was a little serious for me.
I'm tearing up a little bit.
This is a beautiful song. This is a beautiful song and a beautiful show. Let's get into it, shall we?
We shall. Let's do it.
Tia Leone. She's not back to TV. Well, she had a 90s show. She had a big show. She's done TV before, but she's been a film actress for the last decade. And she's in the lead. So a few things that we want to talk about, I think, are story, and then also the makings of what this show sort of is. Because it's not similar to Scandal, if you watch the premiere episode, or any episode of that. It's constantly driving you. You're constantly caught up in some sort of soap opera drama plus plot drama. This has a very different feel. What did you like in the beginning?
Well, for me in the beginning, it was a little slow. It was just like, okay, how is she going from this person who has pigtails and is raking up horse manure, and then all of a sudden she's just in the office as Secretary of State. So that was a really big switch.
Oh, there's a 2 month. They were like, oh, you're 2 months in. We're like,
there
that was
wasn't
quick.
even a little subtitle that said 2 months later. It was just kind of like, oh, okay. Then the next day, she's Secretary of State.
I thought it was. What I liked about the episode was I thought it was believable. The beginning of the exposition, I think, was a little off because even when she's out to dinner with all her CIA friends and they all get the alert about the plane going down, she doesn't seem really compelled by the news. And then even when the family turns the news on, she doesn't seem to actively watch it.
Right.
And for someone I would think taking that role on or who would be interested in international politics, she doesn't react to the death of the Secretary of State in a very grand way. And then it's sort of introduced as sort of the B-plot of the whole series, or the arc of the series, is that there's some sort of controversy to why they died.
Yeah, I definitely think she would have been more affected by it if it was something that we knew was going to happen.
See, and I think it's interesting because she didn't yet know that she was going to be up for this position. You know, the president hadn't shown up yet at her house to offer this job to her. And so I almost feel like perhaps she's distanced herself a little bit on purpose because she's one of those people. She's
living this new life.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like from what we know so far that this was something she chose, or her and her husband chose, and they stepped away from their political CIA spy jobs to be civilians. And while it somewhat still intrigues her, it's kind of like if she just always was so engulfed in it, it would be really hard for her to not miss it more.
I guess it was more like when, for me, maybe this is just because it stood out to me, is when I get here breaking news, I as a civilian am interested. So when the Secretary of State's plane goes down, that's a huge monumental moment. They're the fourth person in the presidential procession.
Right. Yeah.
You know, they're the fourth one from the seat, and she didn't seem compounded by the fact. And I mean, she was called back into duty, then very quickly takes up the task. It's not like there's a lot of transition that she struggles with other than being styled differently, which is odd too because the job itself is so complex. So, and we don't know everything about her background. We don't know everything about her espionage background to know that she would understand the complexities of that role. But presuming if she was CIA, she would have been in that sit room, she would have been in those CIA briefings, she would have worked with a former Secretary of State, so she'd understand the role, but it's very quick. She assumes the role of power very, very quickly.
And that's something I actually I felt a little cheated going straight to 2 months in because we don't see any of that transition. We don't see if there was any resistance or kind of any having to justify why she became Secretary of State. Now, I mean, that could be a whole season in and of itself.
Right.
Just the politics of being accepted. And so, you know, obviously that's probably why they just cut it to where any of the drama behind her being appointed is just
And I think
over.
there's elements, and I think maybe it's just because it's the pilot, but a normal Secretary of State is in the air a good part of their tenure. You know, Hillary Clinton made the record for like most days in the air, literally did only touch ground a few times.
Yeah.
And even Condoleezza Rice has the most miles of any Secretary of State. So it was sort of odd, I think, for the pilot that within the first 2 months, 2 kids in Syria and then this dinner for Swaziland. They should have. Secretary of State has a lot
her
more
moving
going
more,
on,
right?
you know?
Exactly. And I also want to know more about her background in the CIA, just because when the president was there, he said she left because of ethical reasons or whatever that line was, but we don't know what those exactly
And the
were.
sort of ominous thing that's introduced is the company.
Right,
Whatever
exactly.
this company is.
Yeah.
You know, the sort of underground, which is some sort of CIA, FBI initiative group.
Yeah, and then when she's in talking to her husband, she says, I don't want to let him down again. So it sounds like something might have happened before. I guess we'll find out later.
Or he left for his political career. I mean, like,
Yeah, like something
because now he's
happened
president, so he must have run off of his experience in some, so
Yeah.
it couldn't have been too secret.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something there. I just want to know more about that background and that transition, because I feel like one day you're a CIA agent and then the next day you're a professor. Like, I want to know more about how that happened.
Well, I feel like, I don't know, but it's almost like they were maybe in, well, I can't think of it, were they like protective custody? The
Witness protection?
Thank you. Like a witness protection type program where like the spy friends were kind of asking what she's doing, and she's like, oh, well, we're professors, you know, and kind of the humdrum of civilian life per se. But it almost sounds like it was chosen for them a little bit because of her background. Of course, she can teach history in the Cold War, etc. So I hope we see
that's a very interesting
flashbacks.
question, because when they're talking about spies and they're all sort of living normal-ish lives, you know, I think we also have sort of a Hollywood hyped up idea of what a spy is. Like, most spies really are just like advisors or analysts about information, so they can have normal people's lives. But I think for me, what's interesting about this show is maybe its lack of interesting. So if you look at sort of its contemporaries, like The West Wing, or, I mean, Scandal's a soap opera. It's really not a political show.
Right.
House of Cards, or some of those shows,
Yeah.
they are so
full of everything.
The,
There's
the,
abundant
the
of drama.
plot, like the character and then the plot. Like, Tia Leone plays a really strong lead, you know, and she leans in. Like, she has that great scene at the end with the chief of staff where he says, you know, like, I could be a strong ally or opponent, and then she literally steps in and says, me too.
Yeah.
And that's great for her character, but we don't, I mean, I don't know what you got from the rest of the ensemble, but like West Wing was an ensemble show, House of Cards, every character in that is so packed.
Powerful.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
I just
guys.
finished watching
we've got some House of Cards characters in this show.
Yeah, a lot of, and I think it's because like House of Cards has such a weird shooting schedule, because they must be
Yeah.
back on the next season. I hope they're on the next
Right,
season.
they better be.
They might. Well, I mean, if it's not going to come out till February, most likely. They're
probably double hitting, yep.
I mean, they may not need to be doing it. I mean,
Matt
because they're only
McGorry
10
from Orange to New
seasons,
Black
or
is
10
on
episodes.
the new Shonda Rhimes show, you know, so those Netflix kids got time.
They gotta
can
figure it
dabble in,
out.
in network, you know.
Well, that was something I actually just finished watching that today.
House of Cards?
House of Cards, the second season, just the last 2 episodes.
That's so
it
good.
was very interesting to come into this show knowing it was going to be the same roles, meaning president, vice president, secretary of state, etc.,
Yep.
with completely different actors and actresses in completely different
And tone,
roles.
yeah.
And the whole tone of it different. So it was very interesting because I'm like, that's not the chief of staff. Like,
Right.
Doug's the chief
Yeah.
of
Oh,
staff.
very true. Right.
Frank Underwood as president.
Oh, I'm comparing it to the West Wing. I'm like, where's the press secretary? Where's my Allison Janney? Like, I think though, for me, and maybe it's only because I have been spoiled by loving other political shows. This show seems like a really strong CBS series. It's approachable. It's intelligent. The dialogue is smart. When the two the two members of the staff, the speechwriter and the other girl, come in and have the sort of the witty banter with her about the
Yes.
adjectives of what they're going to use for the speech, that is something very typical of the political sort of writing. And obviously, like, the family storyline takes up maybe 40% of the whole pilot. So that's obviously going to be a big part of the story. But I didn't feel compounded by the other characters.
And I hope, you know, that more will come, that it's just kind of establishing her as the lead. And so we'll see more of these other characters kind of filter in,
Yep.
and their storylines kind of filter in as the show goes on. I mean, I'm really excited to see Blake, her her assistant or
Blake.
secretary.
Yeah.
I mean,
he was funny. Like
funny.
he really delivered some character. I think out of all the people, and the husband is obviously
Yeah.
fantastic and so hot.
Yeah, he's so
be
attractive.
honest.
Yeah.
I already don't like the chief of staff, whatever
Me
his
neither.
name is. He was
And his
so
dynamic
annoying.
is great because he's also known as being sort of a rough actor. But like the president, I just didn't feel like any of the other secondary characters, and a lot of them aren't even big names. Sort of. Tia's obviously the big name.
Well, Jumanji lady, what's her name again? BB, whatever.
Oh God, I'm forgetting her name.
Well,
Jumanji
but
lady.
she has been on
Frasier, she'd been in so much.
She's been in movies and TV shows. Like
and they only tease.
I love her.
She's fantastic.
Her character name
If
is,
you're
I think,
confused, she's the deputy chief of
plays
staff, I guess, for
Nadine in the
Nadine.
beginning. She was the one doing the charts
Yep.
with all of the ambassadors' wives in the beginning.
I want her character to be developed more because I feel like she can be.
There's a
either
natural
really
tension
great-
that's definite there. Yeah.
Well, and I loved at the very end of the episode when the dinner went well, that Tia's character, Bess, I guess, acknowledged and said thank you. And it was kind of one of those where there's still that tension, but it was kind of an acknowledging that, like, we won't always get along, but we can work together.
Yeah,
Right.
and for Nadine, I think Nadine and the staff, it's sort of a cockiness, like who's this new woman? She doesn't really understand this role. Tia comes in full power and does exactly what she sort of wants. So that moment at the end where she says, like, good job, and then Tia says thank you, I think Tia's sort of saying, like, you never needed to second guess me. Like, I get what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm going to be great.
There's a reason the president only called me.
But it's a very sort of cautious tease, and the scenes aren't that fast. Like Aaron Sorkin, any of his shows, and a lot of them are very
quick.
They're dialogue driven, and it's fast, and it's moving, and there's drama, but it's always character. It's different from that because I don't feel like any of the scenes. I don't know. She carries the whole. She is the whole show.
does, she is.
And if you look at Kerry Washington on Scandal, obviously it's a different sort of breed. Those shows, I mean, the secondary characters are each have crazy complex stories, but even like when you first meet them, you know they're complex, or every one of those secondary characters
I can't
comes
wait
in,
for it to come back on.
and it's way more of a soap opera, which I sort of appreciate that this isn't. It doesn't turn politics into soap.
Yeah, I like the integrity of the show, the feel of the show because of that tone, and I feel like it will be a little bit slower going off out of the gate because of that. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to give us the depth of the characters because they're taking it seriously, and it's not just going to be a little bit of the drama or scandal.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
House of Cards
Scandal's
are
like
some of the shows, but even House
Scandal's
of
called
Cards
Scandal.
I was just
I mean,
gonna
but
say.
House of Cards is like next
still
level.
has that element of the drama and the scandal.
But exactly, every
built
episode in
into
House
it.
of Cards, like you feel tense watching. You're like, am I allowed to be? Am I in on this meeting? Like, House of Cards is like
But it's
dangerous.
It's written to be narrated that way, where you're in the room because he breaks the fourth wall and acknowledges the camera and the audience at moments. This show isn't going to do that. Where Tia's going to like look over to us and say something.
Right. Oh,
So,
I mean,
which I like though. I like that this is kind of setting it up that way. I like that.
Well, it's also hard, I think, or maybe it's unfair to judge it against these other shows because it is its own.
It's different.
And if you think about it, Madam Secretary, the whole idea is that she carries this show, this woman who is sort of introduced as out of the fold, getting so quickly at the top level, and doing it her own sort of like going rogue, not Sarah Palin-esque way. But I guess that's what the series is her evolution as a thinker. And she's a very objective. I feel like she's not a character. With Kerry Washington, the first episode, she's kissing the president. With House of Cards, they're obviously, like, you never really can trust them. They're up to something. I feel like she's very real and objective with the way that she understands things, intelligent, and, you trust her as a character.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love how he, the president says he only wants her for the job because he knows how she thinks, he knows how she analyzes. So it's kind of where he's got that wavelength with one other person in sync. But also he said, I need somebody that thinks out of the box and you don't even know there is a box, kind of a thing. And just kind of wanting that. So I think that that's where the excitement and kind of that richness for this show is going to come from. Having all of that out of the box kind of new way of thinking and that twist that they couldn't really give us yet because they're establishing.
They have so much to establish in a pilot. It's hard enough with a pilot.
And I'm glad she stepped up to the plate because he did say all these things. I want you to think outside of the box. I know how you think, blah, blah, and that's exactly why she got the job. So when she was shut down the first time, it seemed like that
and the husband's great Socrates back and forth. It's like, get back in there.
And he's like, so you need to take action. And she did, and she went, and texted the first lady, and, got this meeting and went around the chief of staff. So by taking action and showing the president exactly why he hired her in the first place. And I thought that was really important for her character. Because if she didn't do anything, it's like she's not that strong, powerful woman that we thought she was.
And it's also really nice to see how savvy she is about all the elements of politics. Like she says she's not a politician, but there's that great moment where the family has gone on record with New York Times, which would be a big story, and she knows exactly how to play the media. So she calls in the stylist and says, I'll play the part because I know how to get on the front page. That's good political savvy thinking. Like that's everything in publicity. Or everything in politics is innately related to publicity because it's so closely tied.
And on the topic of the makeover, I don't think she really needed one. She looked beautiful in the first place, and then she looked beautiful after the makeover. It wasn't like a Sandra
it was more
Bullock,
the
Miss
star power.
Congeniality
I think it was more like she looked like a normal, boring businesswoman who was going to work,
pantsuit.
and then she turned it on for the public. It's like she had a coordinated outfit.
And that's how I felt. I agreed. I didn't think that she needed it until I saw it, and then I'm like,
After I was like,
I get
that's
it.
what they meant.
Yep.
That's exactly what they meant.
just that extra oomph of
the
like,
red suit
sass.
with the red dress with the coat.
And I think what we'll find that's hopefully exciting, because also, we didn't compare it to Homeland, because it sort of skews a little close to what that show, I mean, that show is also a drama, like it's like so much love involved in it, but it's situations. Like the Secretary of State, the biggest thing is always putting on a show, but also handling situations and being in really unique backroom situations, being part of the conversation before it ever goes public. You know, Benghazi, all those sorts of situations, the sit room. Like one thing I was like, the Secretary of State spends a lot of time when crisis happens in the sit room. Like they go down and that's where they meet. And it looks like the tease for next episode, we're seeing that more activated Tia Leone who's running from meeting to meeting and really handling situations. So it's going to be exciting to see her do that.
Well, and that's what I liked about, they gave us the Syria with the boys, in this episode, and we got to see her
handle
take
something.
the job. Yeah, I mean, and we kind of got a little bit of that spy background. Just she
that
obviously
is the excitement.
People and she has her own connections.
Yeah,
we know that.
And she's and I loved when they were sitting in the church and he said, so you're cashing in your chips because she'd gotten his cousin or cousin's family, and she said no.
I'm appealing to your humanity.
Yes, and I love that because it was, I'm not coming to you to blackmail you or to be shady with you. I'm coming to you person to person.
But I also
with
liked
my integrity.
But I also liked that she did that to say like this is really what I'm here for. But also remember, we're not on the same level. I'm the Secretary of State.
Right.
I'm one of the most powerful people in the world.
And then just reminded him.
Like wink. Thank
she
you.
is.
We'll see you at work.
Yeah.
See you at 9. Get the coffee. So I think it'll be exciting to see the development there. And I also think the secondary characters, if we can sort of analyze them. The husband is fantastic. I think the kids.
I love their relationship. I wrote that. I love that when she's, questioning because the kids are doing their own thing and, school is not going well. And,
and they're
she
opinionated.
She says, did we do the right thing? And he goes, we absolutely did the right thing.
What are you talking about?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then later,
he goes, what do you want me to say?
She's like, well, we're not having sex as much. And he's like, but this and this. And he's like, well, what do I say? And it's just like, he's just that doting husband. And it's like, every girl just wants the guy.
But he's intelligent. It's very nice to see a woman in power. It's also nice to sort of have that dialogue where she says, like, I know some men are, because now we're seeing sort of a new wave in television. So many strong female characters running their shows. And that's always been a thing, but now it's like on all the network shows. And it's dealt with very appropriately. It's not like it's a big deal that she's a woman.
Exactly. I like that she is in a position of power, but that's not affecting her marriage at all.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, like, it is TV, so it's like, oh, there's got to be something wrong with this marriage. It's way too perfect for TV.
Well, I was sort of thinking, like, when is he going to get information? He's not supposed to have? Is he a former spy? Like, but that's my Scandal training or some of the more scandalous shows that you're like waiting for everyone to be like a little like malevolent. Everyone must be wrong. Yeah.
I don't want to. I really hope nothing is crazy going on there, like affairs and that sort of stuff.
Oh my gosh,
but it is TV, and I have been watching all of Scandal, so
exactly. So we're predisposed to a little soap, which I like that it sort of skirts away, and that I do think those, like when she's walking through the kitchen out of the dinner, and we're seeing each one of those secondary characters getting their one line of like, well, I'm staff writer, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go get the cars. That sort of excited me, that's going to be the team that we're going to travel with, that like nuclear team.
Oh yeah, and I loved when they sat down with Blake because she was in the office dealing with the boys of Syria, and they're like, who's she in there with? Because the stylist needed to be introduced. And he's like, I don't know. I'm not telling you.
Down.
Yeah. And they're like, out here in the bullpen, and he
calls her right out.
I
mean, those characters.
I loved that line when he said, I heard about the Christmas party, and I know that.
And all those characters were very funny. Like the two from the former Secretary of State that got carried over, they had funny back and forth. I feel like that team, that young sort of inspiring team, is really going to be compelling as the show sort of goes on. They each get their funny lines.
And I hadn't thought about this, but maybe that's why the show was so, main character driven for the pilot, because maybe they're going to kind of feel out these other characters and decide which ones to develop and keep long-standing and not just be recurring, but be season regulars moving forward.
And also, it's very evident that you need to establish like all the complexities of her situation.
Right.
It's really about her.
Which, she has an anarchist son?
I think it'll be. I absolutely foresee like those kids getting kidnapped in some sort of high stakes environment. But like, again, I'm trained by TV, so like maybe I'm just wanting that because I'm sick.
I just love that because it's like one more thing that it's like this would so never happen. This is so not this is not PC for Madam Secretary.
But she's got a great rapport with those kids. What like the daughter's issue? Oh, she's the boyfriend.
Missing the boyfriend because they had moved. But at the same time, but before we knew that her daughter was missing her boyfriend, we didn't know that it was 2 months later. So I was like, oh, where is her boyfriend?
Yeah.
Well, and it wasn't clear, even though, because it said 2 months later at some point.
Oh, it did?
It did, yeah.
She said, because we were like,
briefly.
Wow, that was quick. Like,
well,
I kind of cut off.
She's watching TV,
But it didn't acknowledge that they moved. Like it wasn't clear that they
after the second commercial break that she's in the office and we went, I guess she took the job.
So
she took the job.
Yes, she said yes.
Yep.
So it's like, but even knowing she took the job, it's like, obviously she's meeting her spy friends. Obviously the president is getting to her house under the radar, in some way. She didn't, on the ranch, didn't live too far out of proximity from DC. So I didn't really think about how, it's so far out of the way that she has to live, that they had to literally relocate, and the kids would be in different schools, and all of that would have to happen. But that did, and that wasn't clear. Like you said, none of that was really clear until the president's coming over, and the kids are talking about, this school sucks too, and my boyfriend, and I miss him, and it's like, okay, we're caught up now.
I wonder... What I think lacked in the show, they did things well. The pilot established character and arc well. We have the idea like the company is something. Tia Leone's character, the secretary, doesn't seem all of that painfully interested in this conspiracy plot. He dies at her friend George dies, and it's obvious like something was up.
Right.
I just don't walk away from the pilot really compelled to the answer.
It's interesting. I agree. I feel like, with the old Secretary of State, obviously there being foul play suspected with the plane going down, not affecting her, not her really caring too much about what the foul play was. But now that it's George, now that it's one of her friends with...
It sort of affirms the evidence.
I think so. And I also think that now she'll care. Because we only got that information right at the tail end of this episode.
But that's normally how like a tease would go. But it doesn't...
Course.
I don't feel like... It didn't thrill me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know if the show's going to be a thriller.
Yeah, I don't think it will be either, but I wanted her to care more when George came to her house in an obvious panic. I wanted her to care more that this might be some, like, crazy thing going on inside of the White House. Because she is that moral, ethical person on the show that's quote unquote not political. So I wanted her to
has some sort of objectivity.
More. Right.
And she balances it there.
Yeah.
But I guess like he comes in with so much energy and could create, I guess in that scene, you'd feel a real tension, a real nervousness if you're watching that scene. And you don't entirely. It's not almost as awkward as it needed to be.
Right. Well, because
I needed to feel more ominous.
So I didn't care.
I needed to feel more threatened as a viewer that, oh, holy shit, like I should stay for a whole season to see where this goes. I agree with that.
I've never watched Scandal. I'll actually go on record, unfortunately, and say
that's fine. It'll change your life.
Good, but it's interesting. But it's interesting because I feel like
is evil. Shonda.
I feel like having so much Scandal and so much, it sounds like go from that show, which I've never seen, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, like you kind of said, like not skewing, but it's trained you to kind of expect a certain amount of
But I guess
reaction.
it's more like if we're looking in... that's exact because I like that this isn't Scandal because I like Scandal, but I know that it's a soap opera.
Scandal. This is a different show.
Right.
I don't need another Scandal. I already have one.
Yeah.
They say House of Cards is what people in DC think DC is like. Scandal is what people in LA think DC is like, and Veep is what DC is actually like. That's like
yeah.
So we'll see where this one fits in.
To see how this plays with the cards.
But West Wing was such a big hit in its day because it seemed very accurate to everything, and also it's really portrayed what the role. That show was fast. And you also had every single character in the entire executive branch and you had senators and you learned politics almost through the show.
Right.
This show is very smart dialogue, very, very smart characters. It'll be interesting to see what situations we as a viewer, as civilians, are put into through the show.
Right.
You know?
Well, and what did you guys think about the dinner? I mean, because I loved how that was one of the previous Secretary of State's agendas or engagements, you know, obligations.
Fluff events.
Was
Well, I'm glad
schedule.
that she didn't make it a fluff event.
She
It
leaned
wasn't
in.
just like a puppet there and just playing her part. She actually, again, similar to how she just went into the president's office and kind of took a stance there. She did that with the dinner as well, and I was happy to see
I guess
her
what
continue to do
I guess
that.
what maybe frustrates me about her, and this is okay because maybe that's
As
what
an
makes
actor
her
or the character?
the character, and that
Okay.
could be part of the actor making character choices. But is that she plays to me middle of the road. I don't feel like she feels. I mean, she has passion in that scene where she's talking to the president, where she fights for her point of view.
I want her to be like that all the time.
I want to be that all the
Yeah.
time. And maybe it's just because in the pilot they didn't want to introduce, they can't introduce so many different moving parts.
Yeah.
You know, it looked like in the tease for the next thing, I don't remember everything of it, but she's running from room to room. And it has the pace of what the West Wing and what that world really is like, especially for someone at that level who's always moving and negotiating deals with the world.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't seem like they really get these dinners and events like that, but there's always something underneath.
Right.
You know,
Well, of
ISIS right
course.
now.
Yeah.
If you're the Secretary of State right now, you can be in a million different countries, but at the same time, every other conversation is what's happening in ISIS with ISIS.
Right.
Exactly.
You know? So I'm interested to see, because she goes home, she has pasta. It's like,
she's
she
home
didn't
in
seem
time for dinner.
conflicted as a
Yep.
character.
And
You know,
I-
I'm like, you're the most one of the most powerful women or people in the entire world. Not that
Yeah.
you don't have the right to go home for pasta, but it's your first couple months at work. I feel like you should be more stressed.
That's how
Yeah.
I felt. Like, you actually have time to go home and have pasta with your family?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
You're the Secretary of State.
think
Man or
Maybe
woman.
we're really comfy in the U.S. Like maybe shit's not getting real right now.
I
But
think as episodes go on and we get further into this, she's going to get a tougher skin. She's going to get more involved in it. She's probably just now being briefed on a lot of things, and the problems have been like delegated to other people. But as she becomes more experienced, I feel like that stress is going to pile on.
And it's
but at the same time, I don't think it's realistic that she's going to be home by 6 for supper. You know what I
right.
mean?
Right.
And we're gonna see those scenes obviously, and what I don't want is I don't want it to become, even House of Cards season 2 becomes a little unrealistic. You know, it's I mean the kill people, like it's over the top.
Yeah.
It's not really maybe what's happening. So this takes, again, like the more middle of the road, but I want more compounding situations. I want more character struggle. And even those secondary characters, like, it looks like the old guard, those two old characters, maybe their old boss was sort of more fluffy and didn't really take the role as seriously. You know,
yeah.
wasn't as a front. Even like people say, like, Hillary Clinton was a very lean-in sort of Secretary of State. She was very initiative-driven. John Kerry has done an amazing job, but is more reactionary.
Right.
You know, Clinton was much more proactive.
Right.
Every single country, every single meeting. Maybe it's because she was running for president a little time. And Kerry was like, I've done my time. I'm going to go home for some ketchup. But
For some ketchup.
his wife, she owns, yeah. But I don't know. So I'm excited to see how those characters grow and the real political situations they find themselves in.
Yeah.
Because it was sort of too easy to be like, I'll call my friend to get them out of Syria. I was like, there's got to be more complex. Like, why didn't we
Right,
get to
how-
see them get
yeah,
out? Why didn't we get to see the
exactly.
extraction?
That's what I wanted. They're
Did they
on the
shoot the
plane,
guards?
right,
Like,
yeah.
where'd the plane come from? Like, that is what the Secretary of State is doing in the sit room, is watching exactly what's happening. Like,
This was a
But she just
back-to-back
gets a text
unofficial
message.
channel. though.
yes.
But she just gets a text message.
But
from
even
Anton.
that, like, we're the TV viewers. We get to see that back fictionalized channel. Like,
Exactly.
I want to know. So
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing, that I wanted
Well,
to see exactly how they got them out of there.
Think about this too. I mean, I'm excited to see how this show
I'm excited.
pans out.
Yep.
How many shows, when you go back and watch the pilot, are they really like as good as you remember? You know what I mean? As the show is like 5
As it
seasons
is
later.
now.
Well, obviously, like,
Almost
shows
never.
grow so crazy,
Right.
and like you can never predict the plot lines, and that's probably one of the things that I don't like a lot of. But by like season 4, there's a plane crash, like on every show. It's like, all right, we ran
Yeah.
out of storylines.
We get it.
But I
Every
do
show has a
think
plane crash.
pilots tease you. Obviously, you have to establish character. You have to establish like excitement, and I think that this establishes one character and some other good
mediocre
ones, some other
excitement.
good
for you.
people.
We needed more excitement about the whole previous Secretary of State thing, and if he was a dirty politician or whatever they were trying to get
If
at
this was a
there.
reality show, then this was great. but it's fictionalized television. Like, there's got to be more tension. I want that chief of staff, like that. They had a good little. It was sort of like all the bumps and scuffs that even the Syrian kids. They landed. The two kids who were stuck landed with a shower. I was like, no bruises, no cuts, no threat. Like
that kind of. Me too.
You know, I know that's awful to want. Obviously, but
it's
but
just,
it
you
seemed
want
too
more real.
Yeah, or more intense. If it's a drama with comedic beats, it needs to be more dramatic. You know, and you have the best character position in the world to have some real drama.
So, do you think that this is partially like a writing thing? As far, you know what I mean? Where you're saying like it's lacking or kind of leaving us wanting a little more than we're given. Do you guys think it's a character, like an actor thing, like with the tension, or do you think it's written to be less tense?
Tia Leone did an interview that she was saying they were saying, how did you prep for this role? And she said she had lunch with Madeleine Albright, who was 97 to 2001 under Clinton. And she said, like, it would be a disservice if I didn't do some of the research, but it didn't seem like she, like, went into it as intensely as other actors or roles have done. And Morgan Freeman's the EP. It doesn't have the same political bravado. You know, an Aaron Sorkin show has a lot of bravado, and it has the best sort of staff advisors that you can imagine on it. Same thing with Shonda Rhimes. Like Grey's Anatomy is a great show. It's a great soap opera. But also when you get in those medical situations, they have some of the best medical minds working on the script of that show. Even Law and Order.
Yeah.
It's a procedural. It has its like blah, blah, blah. But very intelligent people are writing that show, and I feel like this show...
And keeping the jargon and like the integrity of the industry.
Yeah. And we definitely get that. We definitely get that there. It's not like they don't do the role, but it doesn't seem as hard-hitting as political shows tend to be.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So
And
that's my opinion.
Interesting to see how much of it, because it is about her and kind of this family life transitioned into, and you know, this person that's living on a ranch becoming Madam Secretary, you know. So it'll be interesting to see what the balance of home life versus work life is,
and if that affects the marriage. And
I mean, because it still is Madam Secretary. This isn't, you know, some family name about her family and she happens to have this job.
Right.
The job is the
front line. Yeah.
So,
very interesting. Because I think I don't know, and it's also interesting, I guess it'll be interesting to see how it plays in the CBS demo and how people react to it. Not to sort of typecast CBS demos, but they tend to, they have absolutely wonderful programming and great writing. Like Good Wife is a brilliant show.
Yes.
This is a great show. But it doesn't always have to be as scandalous as some other, like, you know, ABC's
crazy.
biggest hits are really, really drama driven. So, and for me, I like political shows because I like to learn through the process. You know, like, I want the inside jargon. I want to see.
Absolutely.
You know, because it's basically like getting to play politics. Like, they take real life sort of situations or situational ideas and apply character with roles. Like, you know.
And I think part of it, too, I mean, it comes on after 60 Minutes, as you found out, because you're watching 60 Minutes.
Right.
The thing is you want that audience from 60 Minutes to stick around and watch this show.
That audience is inquisitive. They know this world.
They know what's happening. They know the realities of it. They know what's realistic and what's not realistic. So they're probably not the same people who are watching Scandal religiously. They're probably not the same people watching Grey's Anatomy.
Doing Shonda Thursdays,
that may or may not happen. So I feel like they want that 60-minute audience. They want that smart, inquisitive, realistic.
And it's definitely a smart, inquisitive show. I mean, the writing, it's definitely
clearly
intelligent.
like an old soul. Because I'm like, give me 60 Minutes. And then I have The Good Wife, which the demo is like mid-50s, like early 60s.
Oh, I'm down. I love it.
So I'm like, put Madam Secretary right in between that. I'm like, I got my Sunday night and my sweats.
Yeah, so we'll see. And I think for me, the takeaway is Tia is a strong lead actress. You know, she's really going to come out of the gate with it.
Yeah,
she doesn't have
I think she's a great person to have at the forefront of this show because she's going to bring a lot of people in, and she's coming back to television, so that's a huge step for her career as well.
And she's funny and she's smart. You don't see a whole, maybe that's good. We don't see like a whole, we don't see her crying to laughing. Like, we don't see sort of a full gamut character. That's why I was saying she sort of plays the middle of the road. She's sort of, I hate saying the word bland. A little, obviously so commanding, so smart, but
you're not
we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. It's a smart character choice for what you don't want a Secretary of State who is highly dramatic or dealing with all the,
Bipolar.
exactly. You don't want that for the role.
With the high highs and low lows.
Yeah. But she has a real command in every scene and really carries the show. So we'll see where that goes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what do we see coming up? So if those are the sort of the final thoughts.
Predictions?
Now, your AFTERBUZZ TV.
We sort of talked about
What we want to
what we think and what we want,
Yeah.
But
I want to see more. I want to, not that I want this to be like a scandally show. I do want them to stick with it being realistic. I want it to be a show that I'm learning like politics from, kind of like we were talking about before. So I do like that about it. But I want her to be consistently strong, consistently always out of the box, never taking, no for an answer, which she did a little bit. Like she was like, I've never met a situation where I don't have a choice. And I want her to take that and then like multiply it by 100.
Exactly. I think it's exciting. I think she has all the bare bones idea, like as a character. It's all these bare bones strengths that thrown into crazy situations are going to be really thrilling to see her lead and challenge.
Yeah.
She's naturally like a challenging character. That I think is going to be really exciting for the show.
Yeah. I want to see, now that we know George is dead, I want to see kind of how that plays out and kind of, does she start caring more about this corruption or,
She's got to.
She has to.
They wouldn't have brought it up if it wasn't a thing.
And what is the threat? Because I was thinking, because when she has this problem with the chief of staff, I was like, well, then he must be behind it. He has, out of all the characters you don't trust, he's one of the people that has the most malicious intent.
Yeah.
And the tension, I'm like, is she safe in this position? The former Secretary of State got killed.
Yeah.
Right. But
is
we
she
know
safe?
he was perhaps doing these
Bad
illegal things or whatever.
Right.
Well, but that's why I think it's so interesting. They had to kill George or one of them so that she would have this personal
catalyst.
interest.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it'll be interesting though, because she is kind of that non-politician, kind of that ethical person. And so now, my question as soon as we found that out was, how is she gonna is she gonna give this more priority or preference because it's somebody she has a personal connection to?
Yeah.
Versus, and is it gonna get priority over something else maybe that objectively would get priority if George was just some other guy?
Right.
Well, I think that this topic of whether or not whatever happened to the former Secretary of State, I think it's important enough for her to care about whether or not she knew George.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I wanted her to have more of a reaction when he told her. Because I feel like it is a really important thing. I don't get why she wouldn't.
And I think if sort of like my last thought on it is now I'm appreciating her a little bit more. Is if we think about the idea of Madam Secretary, if you think about like the Iron Lady with Meryl Streep or any sort of strong leading character, it doesn't have to be female, but it is in this situation. It's about how they handle things. So for other contemporaries, it's, are they in love? Is romance clouding judgment? She seems very objective, intelligent, her and has a unique point of view. She's not a politician. House of Cards is politics. It's people running for public office and they're thirsty. They have ambition that is, she seems to have sort of okay ambition that she just wants to do well.
And she wants to make a change in the world, just like
and the things that you trust.
Genuine change. I don't think it's power hungry at all.
Yes, it's not power hungry. She doesn't have other sort of influences that directly affect her decision-making process. It's sort of exciting to see this woman who is, or this person with an interesting perspective that's atypical for the position, like taking on the old guard.
Well, and what does it say about the president that, this is the only person he says he kind of can trust to, and says yes to.
And tosses his chief of staff's opinion to the side. That's good. I also want to see a lot more with chief of staff and the president. The president, we don't get a lot from. We get this sort of camaraderie with him. Is he behind it? Does he know about the company's controversy? There's not a lot teased with him.
Yeah.
And we don't even get to see him as the politician that he would be. So we'll see where he goes.
I feel like if he chose her and she has this like great moral character, this whole thing, then he's probably right along the same lines. And it's probably the chief of staff that's
knows something
the virus
president doesn't
there.
know.
Yeah, exactly. And in this episode, he's keeping things from the president the whole time. So that could just be, it wouldn't be a huge shock if he was behind this whole thing.
Well, I definitely see her going around him in the future to where, it escalates, of course. And, it's going to be interesting with her roots, her CIA, her spy roots that are going to help her, just like in this episode, do that more.
It's also interesting to see a leader of any position of power that's that important will have epic failure happen inevitably. Like Hillary Clinton, great Secretary of State, Benghazi happens, people die under her watch. She gets blamed, maybe she's part of it. but she had to deal with that situation and that guilt of something going wrong.
Yeah.
And this Secretary of State, a president, things happen that are out of their control or in their control that go wrong. And I think...
But it's still under their watch. So
Yes,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see those scenes with a great actress like Tia Leone carrying those sad scenes where things go wrong.
Yeah, they have to show that.
Yeah. Well, we want to hear what you think about the episode. So tell us on iTunes, YouTube, tweet us. Where are you guys?
I am at Cohen, Couhen, on Instagram and Twitter.
Sterling.
And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Sterling Cates.
I'm at Pat_Lambert, rolls off the tongue. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to see, and we're going to lobby as the show goes on. So we will see you next week. It was great serving with you all.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.